This is season 6, episode 32, number 250 of the Decoded podcast. I'm riled up and he's Chris
Mhm.
Clough.
There we go.
There we
I
go.
like it. It's one of those, it's how close an F-bomb, was to the end of the on-ramp and into the actual, podcast. It's like I don't know, what can I make the equivalent of? It's the equivalent of, like, walking past a classroom, you're doing hall duty, and you walk past the classroom and you just sort of hear someone say, like a word like, "Get down! You're dumb! Shut up!" It's just like this one, kind of word that kind of pops, and you sort of poke your head in the classroom and you see like it's just part of the activity. They're doing a script from Shakespeare, something, right? But it kind of just pops. I think about sometimes how our on ramp just suddenly one of us will say, like, okay, let's get in. And we're coming right out of like a hot moment. So that's why I'm Chris Clough laughing right now. So
Well,
like
yeah, you and I, we're on the ground and all of a sudden the action starts, right? And it's a hot zone and then I hit record or whatever. I hit
yeah, yeah.
live and it's like people are looking at us like what's going on over here? And it's like, "Oh, we're hot. We're hot." I'm riled up. So I'm gonna have to just settle down a little bit. But well, you were emotional a little bit earlier. I'm riled up. It's like
Mhm.
the combo of the emotions is something else. But intentional breathing always helps me, and I've got my tools right here, which is hilarious. This morning, I made my coffee and I came up here, and I was feeling worried, and I had negative thinking going on, which is awesome because I was like, grab your coffee and just get the card and look at the card and follow through with the card. Use the tool. Don't forget about the tool. Um, and and I was like, don't think that, oh no, you're being negative. Don't do that. This is the moment. So live the moment. Use the tools to help you and move on. So
Mhm.
I acknowledge my negative feelings and I use the tool. Um, good morning, Rochelle. Rochelle says it was that kind of week.
Hmm.
Rochelle, it seems to me like every week seems to be that kind of week. It's like we've entered into a new realm, I think, where that week is every week. That's just the vibe I'm getting from people, the vibe I'm getting from teachers. And I try not to feel that vibe because actually, the more I talk to you, Clough, the more we do the podcast and talk about, I guess, the periphery of education. Um, the stories I tell my wife and my kids, they're looking at me like, how do you continue to do your job and not lose your mind? Because the things you're telling us are they're so out there. They're so like left field type things because it's periphery work. And I just say to them, well, the new thing is the no expectations. I My expectations have significantly dropped for everybody and everything, and I feel like I don't know if it's a productive coping strategy. I know that it's not really hurting. I don't feel like it's hurting me. I don't feel like I'm putting anything off. I don't expect anything anymore the way I used to. Um, and it's funny because if I have a good moment with a student, the people around us, the periphery, if so to speak, if we're the center, they're like, "That was awesome. I can't wait till tomorrow." And I'm like, "Don't hold your breath." And they're like, "What do you mean? Why are you being negative?" I'm not being negative. I'm telling you that this was a successful moment. My clientele, those are the little parts of their days. Most of the time it's unsuccessful moments. So you're just celebrating right now because you're involved, but you might not hear about the 3 things this week that go south because I won't tell you those things, but it's going to happen, does every day. well, how do you deal with it? I just don't expect anything. Today was today, this moment was this moment, and then we'll go on to the next moments and see what comes of those. Good morning, Gary, as well. Thank you, Gary, for joining us. Gary, I'm trying to find a way to get into your building to come say hello. Um, I think,
Specific work site, right? Work site.
well, you know what? I think I'm gonna use the lunch card because I'm allowed to eat. So
Showing up at Gary's condo.
I'm
Like, why
literally
does he?
gonna Gary's condo. I'm gonna walk into Gary's student success room holding a sandwich in one hand and a drink in the other and be like, "What's going on, Gary? Can I talk to you while I eat my lunch?"
Mhm.
Um, it's funny, I won't mention his name, but another colleague in our school board, one day about 3 weeks ago, I'm working with a student. It's Friday. I'm working with a student. The phone starts ringing, and I'm like, "Why is this person calling me?" I didn't answer. 20 minutes later, when I was done working with the student, I texted the person. I'm like, "Hey, is everything okay?" And he responded and said, um, "I just wanted to see if you were around so we could go have lunch." And I was like, "Oh, what a novel idea." And he's like, "You are allowed to eat, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm allowed to eat." And he's like, "Okay, well, keep an eye out on Fridays if you're around. Um, let's go grab a bite." I'm like, "Okay, that's cool." It was just funny though. He's like, "You are allowed to eat, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I can eat." Gary, thank you. I'm going to record this day and this time. Gary says I'm
There we
always
go.
welcome. I don't know what
Timestamp
I
eight
don't know
sixteen a.m. on May 6th.
I don't know what your administrator or my administrator will think of that, but I'm happy that you are welcoming me. And Coach Turby is in the house, the Procrastination Proof podcast at Coach Turby on Twitter.
Morning,
Coach,
Coach.
grand rising to you as well, Coach.
You know what? While we've got Coach here,
Yes,
can I drop something?
drop away, bombs away,
So
baby.
so here's and it's going to be a bit of a mix. It's going to be a bit of a mix. And maybe Coach will tap into this. Coach is busy, so Coach, strap in. Strap in just for the next 5 at least to get a little bit of this fire, okay? So this past week, me and Chids, we've been bouncing back and forth talking about the why bother factor. Why bother? And you can put those in air quotes. You could put it just in an emotional state. You could say like something. So for me, I'm in high school. I work in a high school. I'm a special education teacher with a focus on autism and supporting students in community classrooms in that space. But I mean, I've had different landing points. I've had big classes, little classes, but always kind of in that student success, special education, that coaching, cheerleading, parenting kind of a mode of teaching. I've been there for forever. That's my space, my niche. Okay, so one of the things that I've noticed and um, is the why bother factor. And the why bother factor, to sort of make it, let's make it really big and abstract, is one part sentiment, one part I was gonna do it by percentages and just like totally mess up the percentages, like 25%, 25, and then someone goes, what the hell? This like 175%. But anyways, one part emotional state, one part mind set, one part kind of fact and data driven, and let's say one part culture. So those kind of 4 things kind of feed into this thing that I've noticed about the why bother factor. And it sometimes comes up as like there's a I'll take it from the point of view, the student centered perspective. Like you're talking about how they're going to make it to the end of the school year. Now my school, 2 semesters, we've just shifted into the second half of the second semester. For long game players like me, I'm thinking, no man, I've made it through 75% of the school year and I'm in the last 25%. So um white knuckle it, bear down if I have to. We're going to make sure that we close well, close strong. Few minutes left on the clock. We're going to keep using our systems, our processes, our sort of like supports of each other. We're going to make it through. We're going to get the work in. And then, you know what? For us, then you get your summer, you can do your wellness, kind of get back to center, get back to 0 point, whatever you want. But this why bother thing sometimes kicks in when students are looking at their midterm mark or their overall kind of it. I've never heard it used about wellness. That would actually frighten me a lot more if we get into that space of the wellness. Why bother with taking care of myself? But the other part is if we make it about the marks and the student's capacity to kind of close well, to close well and just to keep using the tools you got, you'll make it. Keep handing in your homework as best as you can, you'll make it. Keep connecting with your mentors and your coaches and your teachers, and you'll make it. And still, I run into students that are in the why bother? Like, what's the point? On one point, it can be a really funny conversation because if it's the why bother, when am I going to use calculus in real life? Well, hell, we've been in those conversations more than once, right? But if it's the why bother with just that big sigh, like they just can't muster the juice to get there, that's a pretty, that's a palpable, and sometimes it's sad, it's frustrating. It's a like, how do you not know how awesome you are? So you kind of go into that cajoling kind of stage to get the kid feeling better. But the why bother also flows over into some of the adults in the room. I won't tap too hard on that because I want to keep it about the kids. But here's something I want to connect. So I got this why bother factor. Here's where I need coach. Here's where I need coach. And I just want to keep coach around because I responded, which at first felt like I was kind of needling on Twitter to Coach Smeal. And Coach Smeal yesterday dropped who has been the most influential person in your development this year. And it right away triggered me to this kind of mindset like, if you aren't crediting yourself first, Dr. Will might say, if you ain't paying yourself first, then you're not paying the right person. But if you're not attributing yourself first in your own personal growth, I would say you got some personal growing to do. I get it. I get it. We all have people that are like our inspirators, our mentors. You know, I'm a fan of Goggins. I'm a big fan of Ryan Holiday. Like I appreciate these individuals, but at some point, those are just textbooks. Those are just pods or blogs. And until I act on it, then that's their success, not mine. So I kind of riff on this. I riff on this a little bit, right? I riff on this and I push back. Can I do it? Can I drop it? What I push back? Okay, so I'm getting a thumbs up from Chids. He's my producer right now. So I respond back to Coach. I say, me, for the first time, it's me in many years. I said, I love my crew, but this year so far, I'm the beast. And then I kind of go on. This year, I credit me, blame me, astonish me, and all the credit for everything that I've scrapped together to me. Other years, I would have gladly attributed my growth to others, but this year, I'm owning it, for better, for worse. So this kind of fire in my belly thing, I know I want to find a way to kind of get the kids feeling this a little bit, but there's also a little kind of thing that I think we do as educators where we feel like we need to kind of hat tip other people. Like that's our polite way to compliment ourselves. And I'm trying to sort of walk through here where it's not not as much ego projection as opposed to just centering yourself in your experience. And for better for worse, your growth is your responsibility. And if I circle it back, not only your responsibility, like there's like full stop, it's on you. Whoever the you is listening here, it's on you. You can draw other people in to support you, whatever village you want to kind of lift you. But in the end, better for worse, your successes are yours. And they'll only be replicable or even debatable or even kind of parsable, like to be able to pull it apart to actually know what you did if you were there. I told you, I think I tell you in the polo, I did. People listening to us, me and Chids, we share a lot of stuff on Marco Polo. So I was saying today, like, actually sometime in the last 24 hours, I now have this list in my head of experiences that I know I have to have. This isn't bucket list. This is me looking at my present offering in front of me. I'm not projecting. I'm not regretting. I'm not looking backwards. I'm right now. What are the things in front of me right now I want to experience? So I participated in this artathon thing at my school, staying at the school overnight, supporting the kids doing art. It's funny. I've never thought about my need to be involved in experiences where I know for sure I am at the center of them. Not going to read the book. Not going to talk about it afterwards. Get there on Monday and hear somebody talking about the artathon and like, yeah, that happened at my school. It's so awesome without being there in the room. The last part I'm going to circle around this. I posted out that image. I think I tagged you in it just about this idea of how we lens our existence. And if you have three spheres, past, present, and future, you make sure that that present sphere is massive. So you're just present. I hate doing that. Present in the present, but you're there in the present, and your future and past are smaller spheres, in like exponentially smaller, so that your focus is on the center. So here's where I lean back on coach or any coach. What's it like? What's it like? What's the path? What's the trigger to get people centered in their experience such that somebody asks them, how did you get here? How did you do this thing? That they're comfortable saying, here's what I did. And because I think in a lot of ways, in saying, here's what I did, it's very close to an inferred statement of, this is who I am. And I think the more comfortable you can get with that, you can make some really cool shit happen. Now, I'm riffing off the fact that in the past like 3 months, I've been pushing my physical health stuff. And shids, I've shared the kind of thing, stuff I'm working on. I know for damn sure me getting up in the morning to make it to the gym is nobody's fault but mine. It's not. There's nobody doing this with me. There's no, it is me. And if I've had any gains, I've had gains and pains. I I was saying to a colleague the other day, I don't remember a day in the last 3 months where I haven't walked around sore, but I'm still walking around, right? And making jokes about it, like, oh, there's a muscle I didn't know I had. Oh, there's a muscle that I don't have, but there's a wannabe muscle. So, coaches, teachers, chids, anyone else that's kind of assembled, what's that process like of trying to get someone to exist in the center of their experience? This is big, I guess, where they can sort of look at both the pains and the gains and see them equally as growth. I can't help but think that this is like the center of coach's work. If I have a basic understanding of what he does, um, because I've read his tweets, but I found this past, Rochelle kind of said, kind of commented it was that kind of a week. If I were to say yes, it was that kind of a week, I think I would be saying it from the perspective of, it was that kind of a week because I was around a lot of people that just didn't believe in their center. They just couldn't be in their center. Chids, you shared an amazing story with me, off mic. Who knows? Maybe I'll get into it. Just talking about the one student you're working with and what their current success is, and for us to be very mindful of staying where the kid is, and them sort of being able to re-engage with school at the level that they're prepared to commit to is like, that is fire in the presence. Let's avoid getting into the quantitative. Well, can we get just one more? Can we just get another thing? It's like, no, just look at this kid back in school, right? Like, that's a coffee sip moment. Sorry, I just got to chug some of this down. How do you get people just to stay in that moment and to really attribute themselves? I did this. I'm going to do this. I'm planning. I'm making my plans work so that we don't hit the why bother. Because I think one is the defense to the other. You can never get to the why bother. The why bother is you not being present. The why bother is you going past or future. Because if you're hustling and working in the present, that why bother thing doesn't even creep in. You're too focused on, holy shit, my back hurts. Or holy shit, I actually have a full day of things that I could do here. So that's my launch. That's my pitch.
Okay.
Okay,
A
I
couple of
know.
things.
That
So,
went longer than I thought.
it, that's how it goes.
That's so
Coach
good.
has some comments that I'm going to put up on the screen in a second.
For
What I
sure.
want to say to you though is, as you're explaining this, the why bother. In my line of work, I'm finding that I can help. What I've noticed is that I'm a helper, and I'm there if I'm there. Once they activate that switch, for me that for me that's what sets them on fire. But until then, nothing I do or say is going to flip that switch.
Mhm.
And many people, they call me and they're like, "Go flip the switch," and I'm like, "It doesn't work like that." Nobody's going to do anything they don't want to do. How do you get them to want to do something? I'm noticing the universe is like, Chidiak, you have no say. Maybe you being part of that individual's trajectory at that particular time will help, but maybe it won't. Kids I worked with last year, some of them did nothing. Maybe this year they flipped the switch. Maybe it'll happen next year. I'm nowhere near them now, but I was part of their journey, and maybe something I did during that part will help. Don't know. They'll have to tell me if that's the case. This is a tough one for me. Let's dive into what Coach had to say. So, as you were explaining yourself, Coach said that he absolutely agreed with you. This is where Coach drops his wisdom. So, he says what works for him and his students is reminding everybody of all the accomplishments and achievements. If you start your day with gratitude for all you've accomplished, it stays in the back of your head and continues. So then throughout the day, you can bring that state of feeling accomplished and grateful to those for those experiences. We can learn how to anchor that emotional state and go back into that state on command. For me, the why bother doesn't come about often, but when it does, I've brought about the reasons recently. So all I have to do is go back to that. So that's Coach's perspective on your question.
Mhm.
Um, I don't disagree with the coach. Like I also think there's routine and practice involved. When
Absolutely.
when you practice and when you have a protocol, like when I was walking up to do the podcast today and I was feeling negative, I went right to my tools cards because for me, they anchor me. Looking at them and being like, okay, I need to be grateful. Like it's called grateful
So
flow.
yeah, so Peeps jumping in. So previously, me and Chids have, they're talking about Phil Stutz. Phil Stutz's work and uh,
Michaels.
Barry Michaels, their work with the tools. Um, some great suggestions about um, achieving higher forces, higher powers, things that everyone is aware of, knows of, and that typically we can become resistant to being a part of. So yeah, so those are the Chid's made up some cards that he's carrying with him, and they're very useful. But, for for one reason, just because they're called tools, they're not called answers. they're not called outcomes, right? You got to fix your fence. You got to fix your fence. Holding the hammer in your hand doesn't fix the fence, but you do have a tool there, right? You do have a tool there. So these, I would encourage anyone to check out that book. It's cool. It's good. Um, I like the steps that coaches drop in. I do get it. I think there's a funny thing about we have we have a great vibe Saturday mornings. We got our coffee, we're kind of dropping in. We have that whole open day mindset, right? And when you have the whole open day mindset, I like I think for the best reminder that that coach dropped in there's this idea of gratitude and how that can be a powerful tool in your day, right? Powerful tool, if I would even put it there. And you mentioned it, the grateful flow, right? Phil Stutz also addresses that. And I think though, you know, as teachers, we're all aware of, well, many are aware of like Carol Dweck's work, that sort of growth mindset, which is kind of like the closest, let's say, academic thing to this kind of like philosophical thing that I've unpacked this morning, this idea of attributing your success to you first in some way, because that is, I think, being grateful. I get it as an expression of connection and connectivity to other people, reminds you of the supportive community around you and their necessity to you, and that's an amazing and human thing. um Reminding yourself of your own agency, I also want to make sure that happens in close proximity in there. So being grateful, I think these grateful, whether it's journaling or mentoring, whatever it is that you're using to sort of acknowledge that you are thankful for something, beyond thankful. I think being grateful is like a little bit of a more, I don't necessarily put thankful and grateful together because of the cachet that comes around just saying, "Yeah, thank you." I think grateful is a far more active process. So if you are sort of like acknowledging that you're grateful for your body being able to move, like that's a good little bit of agency. Also being grateful for your body to be able to move in service to your family because you're going out to shovel the driveway. That is an amazing bit of sort of connectivity from agency. And then to be able to say, I'm grateful for my body to be able to move so I can go out and clear my driveway to help my family. And then if I happen to be out there, I'm also going to move my body to clear the snow berm. Anyone listening, Ontario, Canada, snow plows leave big snow piles at the end of your driveway. You might go out and chip away at your neighbors. So you have a nice layer of the and I'm also grateful that I can walk away from that my body will help me to walk away from that little snow pile that I cleared away from my neighbor because I don't need to stay for thanks. So you have this kind of like omniscient kind of gratefulness where you're just willing to do stuff to benefit the community and not wait for a high five. I love it. All of that, all of that. And I think for me, I can groove on that. I think I'm looking at the how does that translate to helping somebody else? And I like what you said about they won't do it. They won't do it if they don't want to do it. But you got me wondering about like is there a way to hijack the moment though where you can get somebody to do something that they don't necessarily want to do?
Yes.
Right? So, and this is, I'm not getting Machiavellian on this. I mean, there's psychology that, I mean, many cults have been made probably with the the discussion we're about to have, right? Getting people to sort of believe in you because you seem to be successful. Like, I think this might be the paradox of being a consultant or an edu celeb is that someone believes in you and some of it rubs off and then they believe in themselves. So it doesn't seed in them. They're transplanting a little bit of that confidence and then putting it inside themselves. So there is a process there to not necessarily believe in yourself, but you'll do it for somebody else. I told you my coffee story. I didn't think I could make coffee for that family that I worked for. Italian family, chef story back in the day. But the day that they asked me to make coffee, there was no way I was going to say no because the risk of saying the possible pain for me not trying was worse than um, actually making a bad coffee. And eventually I got good at it. But yeah, that's what you got me thinking about. Like, somebody's not up in that gratitude thing in order to launch themselves. They don't have that, the fast and furious button. What is it? Nitrous oxide, just to kind of like kind of launch into that thing, barely hanging on to the steering wheel, right? But they know that they're getting ahead in their own life. Working with students with that little, that underdeveloped prefrontal cortex, I'm starting to see some of the adults in my world are still that same student. It's still underdeveloped. They're not willing to do it for themselves. So if I could be that, yeah, I won't even say more, but that's what you got me thinking now.
So the short answer, we got lots of comments here, but the short answer
Take me down with a short answer. I love it.
the short answer for how do we get someone to do what they don't want to do is relationship. That's the short answer.
Mm,
Um, so now when I talk to people, I say I'll be back tomorrow to keep building my relationship with this person because
concrete,
because
scheduled. I'm there.
I'm there. I'll talk to them. They might talk to me, they might not, but I'm there trying to build. And then the other thing I wanted to say was that now that I've done this for almost 2 years, my principal and I were talking the other day, and she said that maybe this coming year we need to let principals know what re-engagement really is. And re-engagement really is, it's not that the kid comes back and sits in the classroom and does everything that they're told. Re-engagement is they are still connected to education and they haven't completely walked away yet. So they're missing, we connect with them. That looks different for all of them. But re-engagement isn't necessarily coming back in and sitting in the room and complying. It's they're still part of the conversation or that they've shifted in how they converse with us. So the fact that, for example, I have one kid who just doesn't go anymore, just doesn't go to school anymore. His parents have taken everything away from him. And that's not even help flip the switch. It's not. So I was talking to somebody, I'm like, is this a complete failure? And they're like, no, because every time you go to the house, he still comes out and talks to you. So there's something there. There's something there because he'll come out and hang out with you. He'll answer the door and come out in the rain to talk to you, but he won't go to school. I'm like, yeah. They're like, there's something still there. Okay.
Hmm.
Right? It's hard for people who are sitting in the building saying, where is he? He needs to be here to learn. And he's literally like, I'm not going anywhere near that building. And he won't tell me why. I don't know if he's told anybody else. And I've known him now for, I don't know, 8 months. I visit him at least twice a week. It's a lot of time. Anyway, so redefine what re-engagement is. Um, Flip the switch. The short answer to get anybody to do anything is relationship. That's my short answer. Okay, let's see if we can jump in here. Holy cow. Okay. Gary, I'm going to tie Gary's comments in because they're not all sequential, but Gary said, be there with them and make sure not to be reductionist in your interaction. Then Gary jumped in a little bit later and he said, it's important to make sure that our interaction with students are not reductionists. Students need to appreciate that they are valued outside of the immediate struggles. I don't disagree with Gary. Um, Gary loves the comment coach made. So let's now go to coach and work our way down. Coach said, for someone without a routine, gratitude is the go-to. And I don't disagree. It's a great go-to. Grateful for self. Connect the thing they don't want with a result that they do want. That is, I have to say, that sounds great, but it's very hard in practice. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying you're onto something. But even that takes time. I think people forget that time is part of the equation. Um, and coach said thank you to Gary's compliment.
I would say time, but active time.
Sure.
Active time, and the only thing I want to like I like that idea of that things. I mean, if we go really abstract, things take time. Okay, like growth is a growth is pretty can be a pretty abstract thing if you only have numerical tools to measure it, right? And school does a really great job of identifying, you know, we have the growing success document, and it speaks to the abstract growth of the whole person, but ultimately anchors itself in numbers, right? Did they get the credit? What grade are they in? How many days of school did they attend? And I think it's good to do the work to have those things as the common tongue. I get it. And I think we kind of need to do that because for some people, they're not good with the metaphysical. Like they're not going for metadata. The thing is that the common tongue will be absenteeism, mark conveyance, um, attendance. That's the student success. So one of the things that I like to talk about is because making these plans, and you've been at the table when this has happened, where you're sort of saying the next thing that we're gonna do is just keep doing this plan. And everyone's like, but it's not working. And sometimes I say, but for us to shift to a new plan to help this particular student, that won't be, we have no evidence to suggest that that will be fruitful either. We're shifting because we have a perceived lack of success. Where you're existing with these kids is though you've got the kid to move from their front door to the front lawn to have a conversation with you. And that 6 foot, 7 foot altitude change, because they came downstairs as well, is a direct violation of the why bother mantra because they bothered. They came down the stairs and they stood in front of you and they had a conversation where they weren't in the sort of like they weren't in the doorway. They weren't in the middle of the decision to go back into the house. They came out into the world. So I like active time. And sometimes active time can actually be hold the line, friends. Just hold. We can have all the in-school team meetings that we want, but there's a high percentage that I attend that say we don't need to. Thank you for everyone getting together, but I actually brought you together to say we're going to keep doing this plan, even though it feels like we're getting bumped and bruised. We're going to keep doing this. And they're like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "You can't. You might not see it. You might not be able to hear it, but I'm so close to this moment that I can hear that rock scraping along the ground, kind of starting to inch forward. The inertia is changing. Now, do we have endless time? I don't know, but I almost kind of ignore that factor because I think when I'm in the room and working on these things, I also have to accept that I will not be the one that will see the ultimate success of this kid. I'm going to be the signpost. I'm going to be the most consistent player, reliable, emotionally, let's say, open, sometimes emotionally stable. Um, I can remember way back. I don't say this anymore. And even to say this now is so ego loaded in me believing that I can help people. But I one point I wrote it down because I was working through what is I used to say. I said to a kid one time, I said, I'm the ocean. You go left or right, no matter, doesn't matter at all. At some point, you're going to meet me again. And the kid's looking at me like, what the hell does that mean? I'm like, I'm going to keep offering you these same supports. You can run away from me. You can kind of duck out of the room. You could sort of skip, but I will tell you, I will still be here for you when you walk back in through that door. And I'm going to keep offering you the same stuff. And I think, one of the coach's suggestions, Gary's suggestions coming on this as well is what is our tolerance for having these sort of like active, it's like the energy of it. Is it kinetic potential? You're just kind I guess it's potential energy. You're just letting that potential energy grow while a kid is making small gains and just say, we are going to wait this out. We're going to stay here in it. As you said, stay in communication, stay connecting, keep everyone kind of like apprised of what's going on, but never get too swept up in this thing like it has to be this certain way. Like it's and the fact that somebody says you're like, thank you very much. I appreciate that you gave me a criteria based assessment or rubric according for the student's success. And I humbly challenge you to think of it, if we don't use this, in what other ways can we actually assess their success? Well, I don't know. I don't know the kid. I do. The kid's being successful. I can hear that rock grinding, them trying to push it. And as they push it, it wears down and it wears down and it wears down to the point that maybe they can pick it up. They can pick it up themselves. And at that point, I only have to walk beside them. I don't have to help them tug on that chain anymore. So time. I like active time. I'm not quite sure how to make it more active. I know how to actively impede that is when I'm in those meetings. Sometimes people just kind of like my educational equivalent of please stop talking. We're just going to keep doing this thing. Please stop talking. Stop making more plans. We're just going to keep doing this.
There's a lot of layers. There's a lot of layers. There's a lot of movement. Even when there isn't movement, there's movement. Um, and I guess you have to be attuned to it. And you can't be attuned to it when you're in the building, you're running a building with, 8,000 kids, and it's a circus all day long because there's constantly things happening. Then there's me, and I've told you this, I'm living such a fine-grained reality, a fine-grained dysfunctional reality, and now I have no expectations. It's like it constantly just it's evolving. Um, Gary said, thank you for the comment about re-engagement.
Mhm.
Gary said, we have to make sure re-engagement is more than a tool for tracking. Yes, even though when you were talking, Chris, and with Gary's comment about tracking, last year I had a student that can was constantly self-sabotaging, and we were working to get this student 2 credits. This kid went from a full course load to just 2 credits. And I remember thinking and saying to this student, you are getting these 2 credits. If I have to break down your door at home and drag you to a computer to do this work with me. It's going to happen. I had become so invested in this student and their success for these 2 credits. And you know what? Now that I look back on it, yeah, part of that was tracking. Part of that was like, you kid, you're gonna add 2 more credits to our statistics. You're not going anywhere. Especially since like I've been working with you there was so many layers, right? I, there was the personal layer. I got along with him, he got along with me. There was a positive relationship. Then there was the self-sabotage because he didn't know what to do with good times. He didn't know what to do. Um, there was his family layer. There was his social layer. There was the school pressure. There were just layers everywhere. And I was like the Kool-Aid guy that just broke the wall and was like, "You're getting these 2 credits. I don't care what's happening around us. I'm getting those stats, and you're getting the credits." Um, so I think about that. It's shifted for me this year because I've got some, like, you should see some of the cases. They're like, "Here, deal with this." And I'm like, "Oh, and you expect this student to be back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. ready to rock, right?" They kind of look at you, they don't know what to answer. And I'm like, "Go away. Don't tell me you want them back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. as you give me a student that's not been here for 15 months at 3 p.m. Like, whatever." So there's a little bit of, I'll break that wall too and give you some of the Kool-Aid. Um, Gary said the persistence and patience is crucial. Yes, yes, it is. And then Rochelle agreed with Gary. So true, Gary. So that's where we're at with the comments.
It's good.
It is good. We got some highfalutin people in this room. Like, I've seen Gary work. I've seen Rochelle work. I've spent enough digital time with Coach Turby to know what he's about. He demonstrates. They all demonstrate a consistency in a positive direction, and that's the key. I wanted to say something about that. It came up earlier. This business of consistency. No matter how small you start, no matter how small your actions are, it is that consistency and creating a routine that you can build upon that then equals what I would call discipline. Like me coming up the stairs feeling like beep, thinking, "Where are your cards?" That's discipline because I've built a routine. I started small. And now it's like, "Where are my cards? I need to go to the cards because I'm feeling and thinking not good. Where are the cards?" I know that if I go to the cards, that simple action will get me to where I need to be on the other side of the cards. It's like when I don't feel like exercising. The minute I put my shoes on, that's I know I'm committed. So there are mornings where I wake up and I'm like, "Yeah, I don't want to do this." And literally, as I'm walking out of the bedroom and down the stairs and turning the lights on, I'm saying to myself, "I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this." Get to the basement, turn the machine on, turn the television on, sit down to put my shoes on. I don't want to do this. The minute the shoes go on my feet, I'm like, "I'm doing this." And then I get on the machine, and next thing you know, time has passed and I'm turning everything off, going to shower. And I'm like,
Hmm.
"I did it, you know, because I know that on the other side of "I'm not going to do this" is something really cool. I know that when I'm not feeling so great and saying to myself, "Where are your cards?" Because I don't actually need the cards. I know what to do. But the minute I pick them up and hold them, I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay." Because I know that this is part of the process, those little routines. Because at first it's stupid, right? My kids are like, "Dad, what are you doing?" Like, I'm on the couch, we're watching television, and I'm literally like, "Oh, I don't want to do this reversal of desire. Okay, when do I use this?" And my kid's like, "Dad, what are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm looking at my cards." Why? Because they're tools that can help me feel better. They're tools that can help me get to where I want to be. Right now, for whatever reason, I'm scared to go there. And my kids are like, "What?" I'm like, "I'm scared to go there." They've never really heard me say that before. So that's
Hmm.
new to them too, right? Rochelle says, "Start as you mean to go." And that's hard for people, Rochelle. It's hard for people to start because they, what's the point is what they say.
Why bother?
Why bother? Even like I could put my shoes on and not get on the machine, and it's still better than not having put my shoes on. It sounds absolutely ridiculous, but mentally speaking, routine wise, building yourself towards something, it makes perfect sense, but you don't know it until you get further down the road and you look back and you're like, hey, that was just part of my process. I think I've done a better job of internalizing that those little stupid things that may appear that way at this moment will turn into something really good down the road, because that's happened to me about 1,000 times now in my life. So why would I deny that?
I find I'm often talking to students about idiosyncrasies. Like when they say they can't start a habit and they really can't wrap their head around what it means to kind of like have a homework routine or like a bedtime routine. But so I start with the idiosyncratic stuff. I'm like, you came in here and you sat down in that chair. What's your habit? How did that become the place that you I was like, you who did this? There was some comedian that did something about this. I'm having a flashback. I think they were taking it from a really cynical point of view though, like talking about this entitlement kind of factor, like we give gold stars for everything. Um, then they, like, look at my foot. That's my foot. That's that. Look at I moved it one step forward. Look at what I did. I did that. I did that. I took one step side. Look at that. I'm smiling. Look at my face. I'm smiling. I did that. Um, to be cynical, sure. Like, we could choose not to celebrate that. But even like James Clear, Atomic Habits. The dude says it's quite clear. Small rewards towards the bigger goal. Put something in to build the habit. To build the habit, put small impediments that remind you of the thing that you're trying to do. According to Rochelle, right? That's what we do. And then if you're trying to work towards that bigger goal, make sure there's the impediments that let you to hang on to whatever your process is. But right beside that impediment, put the reward, little snack, a little something, something there. So I often go to the idiosyncratic behaviors that the students have where they have built habits to remind them you can. You have this. I didn't do anything. You pick that chair and you sit in that chair every single day. You're even hanging on to that habit. So you're able to secure it and anchor it. You don't want to change your seat. That's you deciding you don't want to change. There's nothing random about that. There's actually no law in the universe, metaphysical or scientific or spiritual or otherwise, that says you can't get up from that chair and sit somewhere else in the room. But I'm betting you feel pretty stable sitting there. I said, so let's do that. How did you decide that that was the chair? How did you decide that you want to go home and play video games? How did you decide that that granola bar with the chocolate chips is better than the one with the raisins? And let's build some habits from there. And I like starting there with those small things for the kids, sort of tying in gratitude, tying in relationship, tying in the how do we avoid the why bother. Sometimes the why bother, there's an answer as to why you are actually not bothering to bother. And then you work on the process afterwards to sort of get you out of that space. Um, for the adults as well. I think that works for the adults too.
Those very small things that appear to be insignificant, I tell my students they are significant at that time, and they'll
Mhm.
prove to be when you look back. So it's really cool when I make sure that um, I make kids aware of things, and I celebrate those things. So like you said, the kid coming to the door, you know, the other day I had that moment again. The kid came to the door and we had a laugh. Like it was like two dudes just sitting chatting. Um, and then I reminded, when it was time for me to go, the student was like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "Hey dude, I'm working." Like I reminded the student, I'm at work. I'm glad I could check in with you today. I'm glad we could chat about some of these things, but there are other students that I work with. So our time has come to an end. And then the joke at the end was, you want more time? I can book in more time if you're gonna meet me in the building down the street. And they're like, yeah, that's not happening. I'm like, I put it out there for you. And it's all done in jest, because what is me being dead serious gonna do? Nothing. Like, It's not. The kid switch is not, it's not on. It's off. Do I need to burn my relationship bridge? No, I don't. There's fire all around this kid. Everything's burning. We don't need to burn my bridge too. Let's have one space that's okay for this kid. And I don't mean for that to sound like I'm the only one in the kid's life. That's not true, but I don't need to bring more heartache to the kid. The kid's already in heartache. He doesn't go to school. He doesn't know what's going on at school. Separated from his friends, has no idea what they're learning about. Nothing. You don't need me raining on your parade. But the reminder is I got to go. I got to go see some other kids. Thanks for your time today. Have a great weekend. I'll
It
come back
is
next week.
it is a funny moment in that those student advocacy spaces though, or like when you're just sharing a really good, it reminds I love the yeah, so I like what you post up there for coach everything matters. And this is where making that less abstract can be really fascinating. So often I have students that'll come by and visit me in the classroom. So they'll just show up. So these are just random people showing up in my classroom. And I have really like I don't have a lot of small talk with students. There isn't. They show up and they're talking about real things at the doorway. And my current students are just sitting there like, who the hell is that person? Like they don't, my students don't understand the big picture of everything mattering because I'm important to them in this classroom, right? Like it's a very singular type of relational experience. We exist in this classroom. So their concept of me existing outside of time and space for them and somehow I'm have relationships with other students is mind blowing to them. Mind blowing. And I'll just say, I like that because part of it is I'm demonstrating my commitment to them beyond the classroom. Because obviously, if other kids are coming back to visit me, I'm open to the possibility of you six in front of me coming back and visiting me too. And if you see how I'm treating them, and it feels like I'm treating them the same way I treat you, you can kind of feel a little bit of the jealousy thing, like, why is dad hanging out with that person kind of like factor? Or you can just kind of say, wow, this moment is going to extend beyond right now. Everything matters. And you telling the kid, like, we'll make the appointment, I'm there for you, but I do have to go see someone else can be a little bit of a stunner. Like, oh, yeah, that's right. I guess you do help other people. Like this is kind of like when you leave me, where do you go? You obviously like you don't only exist like the fridge light. You don't just pop on when we're together. You're there for whoever else opens the fridge. So I love that. And I love that moment of being, I think that's the, comes back to my ocean kind of statement is that, despite this one student walking away from me, maybe not taking the advice or taking the support or just taking the moment, there are other individuals that sort of welcome that moment and just kind of sit for a spell and relax for a second there and kind of take it in. Um, I like that. I like thinking about school that way.
Gary says that sometimes when the student says, "Why bother?" it's not a reluctance to act. It is sometimes a sign that in the moment the student is asking in that moment interaction to focus energy elsewhere.
They are seriously, I also take it as well. It is a serious, it's not a diffusion, it's not an evaporation, it's not a giving up. They are craving an instruction manual of how to move from where they are to where they would rather be. And that's just like the two episodes again. We had another version of this question that sometimes students uh in risk and at risk will ask you, or those kind of challenge you with, what are my parents going to do? Remember, we crossed that bridge with that question. And for some educators, they're going to take that as as a like a like a kung fu move back, like you better not call my parents because I'm the one that's going to cause like headaches in your world. You think like my parents aren't going to, I can't do anything to control me either. But I shared the story of the student, one of my students that asked something like that question, and they were actually they were they were desperate. They were desperate in asking that question because their understanding of what a parent should be able to do in order to help them wasn't. wasn't. So their parents actually are not able to play any generative or productive role in helping them have success, which is incredibly sad, but incredibly like that's real, right? So the why bother, I get it, can be sort of like the hands up in the air, or it could just be open hands like help me, help me. Or what are my parents going to do about it can be seen as like, the student giving you and the system the finger, or it could be a plea saying, help me and help my parents because we need help. And that I think if you can, in this moment of trying to get the kids to center themselves, if I take it back to where I was starting, like people wanting to take credit for their successes in order to take account of where they've got to, in order to be present in where they are, I'm gonna raise the lens on sometimes we have to hear their threatening language in a different way and actually hear the please help me question that might just be inferred within it. So I know Gary's doing this work, you do this work, others as well as sort of like existing in the space where we have to be able to code switch, code interpret really, really keenly to create sort of like a multiverse of possibilities. Because the moment that we sort of take whatever we think they're saying and apply it against the rubric that our school provides for student success, we block opportunity sometimes, because if we think it's just the kid trying to get math, it's about them being successful in the test and not actually about the context, the space that they learn in, or the resources that they need, or the history of them being frustrated by that course. Us providing a tutor is a one note path to not ever noticing this moment again where the kid was actually saying, I need to be helped differently. Please help me differently.
I do see barriers being put up in front of people all the time. And I would say 98% of the time it's not intentional. It's just part of a routine that people follow that doesn't work for everybody. And I know it's hard because I was a classroom teacher. And I remember I've had students where people will come to me and tell me, hey, can you try this? Can you try that now? And I'm like, it's on the list, right? Like I've
Mm.
got like 25 other kids, so this is hard, but it's on the list. Um, and I still tried. And what's killing me is sometimes there are people that don't even want to try for whatever reason, because there are layers there too. So I try to be very open to everybody, but sometimes it gets old. Sometimes, you look at someone, you're like, okay, this is old now. And I've done that with some of my students. I'm like, this is getting old. So you need to give me some direction because I must be misreading something. And then that always leads to a good conversation. Rochelle says she agrees with Gary. It's a call to dig deeper. And I would argue, Rochelle, it might be a call to dig somewhere else too. So
Yeah.
you're digging, digging, digging.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to shift over to another quadrant and start digging there and maybe go deeper there than you have in the other quadrant. Like, I don't know. Um, it's like the one constant for me is that the constant is I'm still reaching out to people every day, even though they've done everything in their power to cut me off, hide from me. It's like it's funny, I should give it a name, like Roland fatigue. Like some of these people, it's funny, they asked for help, but now they're looking at me, they're like, you need to go away now. And I'm like, what do you
Yeah.
mean? And they're like, we asked for help, but this is too much. I'm like, this is what I do. And I take pride in that. I'm like, this is Roland fatigue because I told you this is my job. So I don't get to talk to you once a week. If imagine if I just talked to all my students once a week, I'd be sitting around doing nothing all day. I'm like, nobody's gonna keep me in business. Like I'm not. Why would anybody want to pay me for not doing any work? So I'm like, this is my job, and I told you at the beginning of this relationship, I'd be checking in with you quite often. I'd be visiting the house. I'd be visiting the school. This is my job. You asked for help, and maybe you thought I wasn't gonna help, or maybe you thought I'd try it out and I'd get tired of your shenanigans quickly and walk away. I don't get to walk away. I don't. And I'm not trapped to a building. So if you don't come to school, I can't go get you because I'm in the building with 25 other kids. My job is I can go get you. I do go and get you. Rolling fatigue, baby. I'm tired
Mhm.
too, but I find ways to recharge and get back to it. Some people are tired. They're like, "Can this guy leave us alone?" And then it's like, "You asked for help. Do you not like the help? Or did you just not?" I believe it's a pessimistic perspective, but I'm going with my gut. They asked for help because they thought they weren't going to get it. And that they're in a mode of, we need help, we need help, we need help. And then you have somebody who comes in and actually gives it 110% to help you in the way he thinks is right, but then in the way that needs to shift. As things shift, different things become right. You didn't expect any of this to happen, and it's happening. And now you're pushing back because you don't know what to do with it, or you didn't want it. You just said it because it was the right thing to say because of your life circumstance, which I get. I get that. But when I say I will walk you to school, I will walk and talk. I'll make sure I make sure to build you a cushion so that you can bounce off the cushion when you're not feeling so hot, and there's different escape paths and stuff. I will build all that for you, but you need to be part of that. They're like, "Whoa, this is intense." I'm like, "I told you it would be. This is my job."
I think interventional work is like that, right? I get the therapeutic um
It's not
open
just
up.
me. They do it
No,
with
no.
everybody.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
But I think that's what I mean. Interventional work can be you, it could be their parent or guardian, it could be their friend. I think when you choose to do interventional work, my hope is that you have a nice toolbox of effective or emotional intelligence, as well as an understanding in psychology and a grounding in the resources that the school board has to offer. And you get, at a developmental stage, how people are able to learn. Like there's a lot of little bits in that toolkit. Um, but the choice to be an ent to sort of take those together and do interventional work. I like sometimes some of my best interventions have been when I tell colleagues, no, don't change the plan, or I think you are wrong. I said, my experience with this child and in other spaces, kind of informs me in a different way. And also telling the kid when they're wrong. No, your thinking is incorrect here. I can't take it away from you, but I want to offer this up that that thinking that you're using right now is not actually supporting the goals that you think you're growing here, which kind of goes back to how you articulated it. Is like, are you prepared to kind of like work in this intense manner, right? And I've even been left committees where I've been given the opportunity to say, Clef, is there anything else you kind of want to add or sort of suggest? I'm like, yeah, just keep this plan. I don't have to be the one that delivers it, but don't be quick to jump to another plan. If we keep talking about helping the kid, but it could even be just making a plan in general. Don't be quick. Maybe I'm not the one to sort of make sure the success of this kid. Uh, like I might not be there at the finish line, but don't jump out of the plan just because I'm not the one here promoting it anymore. Be cautious of just adding another layer, with the only reason being is that we're going to add another layer because this plan isn't working. But if we go back to the time factor, this might actually take a year. Try saying that in a student success meeting where they're looking for the short goal, right? No, this is a 2-year plan. What? We can't. Who's going to walk the kid to school a year from now? We don't know yet. I'm just telling you what's working now. So if we're going to replicate it and watch for that moment when the kid moves from why bother, like they're taking a swing at you, to, you know what? Why bother? Like they're more a little bit more circumspect and they're ready for it. Or they shift from what are my parents going to do to, what can my parents do? Because they start to understand there's some parts that their parents can play. And that takes time. And that goes back to one of the things, gratitude and relationship.
I want to drop two things. The first one is, for me, there's layers of power dynamic, right? I'm a teacher, and I'm working with other teachers, and I'm working with like special education teacher, classroom teacher. I'm working with principals, and I'm working with parents, right? And what's really interesting to me is a few times I've seen and experienced. Um, so my job is to collaboratively like figure things out, right? So that means it's not me walking in saying this is how it's going to be. It's this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm seeing, and then the other side, like we come to an agreement on what we should do. And sometimes I see that they don't agree with anything I want to do. And so that's okay. That's not collaborative. That's just them making a decision. And then watching a situation go south because of the power dynamic. I think like if you ask my kids, they'll tell you I tell them what to do all the time. But I don't believe in my work experience. I walk around telling everybody what to do. I make suggestions based on experience and observation. And some people, they just don't agree to them. And I've seen it. I've seen it, and it makes me laugh, but it makes me cry. The laughing part is this is hilarious that you if you think all this is going to work, then why did you call me? You called me to check a box off. Okay, you got your checkbox. Now let me go do my work, right? So there's that. And then the crying is you're hurting this kid over and over again. And you don't see it that way, but you're hurting the kid because the kid's not the center. There's everything else is the center. So I wanted to say that about the layers.
I like the why did you call me? Why did you call me? Whether you would actually say that out loud or that's just a mindset. I've shifted to I'm going to tell you why you called me. I'm gonna inject purpose into this as to why I'm here. And I love that I used to it reminds me of working with students, suspension and expulsion, talking to them. And one of the conversations that came up a lot um was around when the kids started to talk about it's amazing just like the sort of like aha moments that the kids will have, and to really kind of like celebrate the energy that goes into it, but sometimes not directly address their aha moments, because part of it is turning turning shit into teachable moments is incredibly cruel sometimes. Like, just let the kid have their aha moment. Like, if they're rocked with this big idea, this big thought where they see themselves in a certain way, you don't have to flip that into a lesson plan. You don't have to get them to write a reflective piece about it. Hell, you only have to address it. But it's cool when you're in the room when it happens. I had a student one time say they were talking to their friend, so another person that was on suspension, and they actually said jokingly, it was honestly jokingly, but sometimes the words just come out and the understanding comes afterwards. So here's what the kid said. It's so hilarious. The whole time that I've ever seen you is when we get suspended. And then there was like nothing afterwards. And then there was a little couple few laughs, and I'm on the other side. I'm like, that's a beautiful bit. Like, because the classroom I was working in, it was sort of like split two rooms together with a common door. So I could hear them talking. Maybe it was lunch break or they were just sort of like on a down break. I was like, that's self-awareness. That's a moment of self-awareness. And I had to really hold back. I just let it ride. Everything in me wanted me to go around and see, notice that moment right there. Because if that's a problem, as in you two keep meeting up at this site, do you want to change that behavior? The counterspin is they might actually enjoy meeting up with each other, right? But I just love that statement. I love that statement of self-awareness, them saying, we only ever see each other when we're on suspension. They were at different schools. So it's kind of like the moment afterwards I'm playing out as I'm driving home, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of like how my world kind of is for some of the teachers in EDU. Like, you only ever see them when you're at a conference. So that's the equivalent for these kids, right? Um, but the other one that I was intentional about, and I looked for opportunities about this when it was useful, is to talk about the students from as they were sitting in front of me and having challenges with their coursework in this space of where they were suspended or expelled to. The broad conversation was, at what point, so let's go back and you can think about your sort of like your educational path. At what point was it inevitable that you were going to meet a teacher like me in a program like this? And I never wanted to hold them there, but I always found in that conversation we were able to kind of talk about a school experience that was kind of a starting point, a social experience, a developmental experience. And sometimes the kid said, yeah, I stopped attending school regularly back in grade 4. And I didn't, I, there were times where the kids actually explained what happened, and there were a lot of different versions about what happened there. Or I started fighting a lot when I was in grade 6, whatever. And I'm working with high school students. So these are some behavioral norms that have become quite firm, like in high school. Like it's just the way how they now navigate the world. And then, that always opened up the possibility of talking about, well, how are the conditions that made it inevitable for you to meet me? Are they still the same? Or are you just trapped in this sort of behavioral path? And then at that point, like your work, I had a social worker working with me. I'm like, okay, so I can help you with the academic point. You're not strong in math right now. You're not a strong reader right now. I can work with that. But they're like emotionally, like I just feel like I can't do relationships well, or I'm sort of having identity sort of questions that I don't know how to work through. I'm like, okay, we have the social worker. So we then had an idea of who could sort of like support the kid in that moment. But those are like your access points to making sure that whatever relationship you're sort of building with a kid is kind of based on that opportunity to say you can change, you can pivot on this, you can pivot, you can change on this if you wish to. And I would say one of the things I miss most about working in that program was the opportunity to be gifted or invited into that space. Because I had other students as well that were there. They were not happy to be there. They weren't going to comply with the work there. Like they weren't seeking to notice. They didn't seem to be seeking that any sort of interest in noticing something about themselves. Like those two boys mentioning the only time we see each other is when we're suspended. How they kind of laughed about it. In my mind, I'm like, that's good to notice. That's a good thing to notice. There's something there
Gary said that he thinks that sometimes people expect the band-aid and not true intervention efforts.
for sure. The Band-Aid, Band-Aid, easy fix. Here's a take a sip of this, it's all good. Whatever, the magic, right? There's no magic. There's no
The
magic.
magic.
Yeah, there's no
The
magic. We've
magic.
talked we've talked about the magic in the past. Couldn't you just but really, is it that? Are you sure? Like these questions that push back that somehow suggest that we're wizards. So we ain't.
I wish I was with this beard. As it gets
You know,
longer, I wish I
you,
was.
you know what got me thinking about Hogwarts today?
Tell me.
Watching the procession of individuals going to King Charles's coronation. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, look at those robes." And they're like carrying some of them look like they're carrying like magic wands too, the scepter, the orb of whatever, the crown of whatever. And I was like, I kind of chuckled. I'm like, look at this ceremony, look at this ritual. But then I could kind of flip to maybe it's important to somebody. Maybe this is important to somebody. I don't know. But yeah, I was like, they all look like wizards. Look at them in these long robes. I'm like, what house are they from? Seriously, seriously. If you get any of the footage of the procession prior to, and then yeah, the high collars, the kind of like sturdy standard, like they weren't walking in any synchronicity, which I thought was kind of cool because it wasn't stuffy like everyone was like in lockstep like at a funeral. And sometimes the spacing got weird, like they weren't staying. I'm like, did they not rehearse this? I'm like, but I guess it's just people walk in the way that they walk, right? But yeah, the headdress, the head adornments, and the big, what seemed to be random placement of just large, heavy looking objects on. It also made me think about them like, graduation ceremonies. I hate wearing I hate wearing the robe. I don't like wearing the robe. Like as the teacher, sometimes you have to get the one from the university you graduated from. Have you ever seen this before? You go
I've
to the
seen it, but I've not.
Yeah,
It's not my world.
it ain't my jam. It ain't my jam. Hmm. It's a good Saturday,
It's off to a great start.
I would say. You got me thinking I need another coffee, but I'm not sure. I talked a lot today. I feel like I pushed my Clough agenda. I actually wrote notes, eh? Look at I actually wrote some stuff down that I wanted to say.
That's good because even when I was preparing to come into this podcast today, I thought you dropped 3 or 4 big topics on me this week connected to the podcast that I thought you were going to address, and I was like, these are big ones. Like
Mhm.
Clough's gonna have a lot to say.
I'm gonna
Um,
chew on them a bit.
yeah. Do you want to hit on anything else before we start to shut this down?
No, I'm craving a chopped sandwich, a chopped deli sandwich, another one.
Yeah,
That's
you
that's
you're
that's a
killing me with that. I'm
you
dying over
gotta try
here,
it. You gotta try it.
and I'm going to talk with my wife today about. I feel like we don't have a good selection of deli meats in this house, and I think we need to turn a page.
We don't have much left in the house at all. So when I head upstairs, what time is it? Yeah, I'm gonna head upstairs and see if people want to go for breakfast or get bagels. There's a good bagel shop um, just in the town nearby. So their cream cheese and lox bagels are absolutely delicious.
Um, Gary says, and I wish you well. I'm sure I'll hear all about your adventure, Clough, which is awesome. Gary says, thanks for the rich discussion. I want to say thanks to you, Gary and Rochelle and Coach Turby for stepping in, jumping in, and adding your perspectives, your questions, your comments. I think that's part of what makes this a little bit of a richer experience is that we're open to other people coming in and chewing the fat with us and talking about these topics because if it's just Clough and I guess we are living kind of in a silo. So it's nice to have
Easy
other
now, own
people.
it, own it. Center yourself in this, right? Think it. Don't forget your story to this path. The story up to this point, Chids. We've worked to appreciate ourselves, just us two in this room for 6 years now. Really, and we shower. It ain't stinky in this silo. It ain't
No,
stinky in this
that's true.
silo.
It's not
Yeah,
stinky in the silo, and I don't want to go dark, but whether people come here or not, we're still doing our thing.
yeah.
This is what
I
we
will
do.
say though, we have to start our. I think our decoded LMS, where we can provide achievement badges because I think Gary has hit the three episode mark. I think Gary's been in the room 3 weeks in a row. So Rochelle too. Rochelle's like locked in. Like we have some. We got to figure this out. What's the badge system like? Decoded badges.
I'm gonna drop Ramona's name, our decoded podcast.
Our developer,
She's
yeah,
well,
at
she's
large.
our fan base president, is she not? Fan
Hmm.
club
Hmm.
president. I wonder how she's doing today. Hope she's well. Hope she's well.
She's a VP now, eh?
I know, maybe that's why we don't hear from her because she's living in a
Mhm.
new realm.
Everyone knows how we
She's
feel.
admin.
Everyone knows how we feel about administrators. We love them.
Well, you
We
have
love
to.
them.
You're married to one.
And a fantastical, I'm saying this, a fantastical one. Big heart, big strategy, big shoulders. So
So you drew a picture of the sun with some clouds around it and birds flying. I'm
yeah,
sorry, I break that down into like
that
the
was good.
simplest form.
Yeah, you did the alt text on the audio alt text.
Can you like can you tell us where that comes from? Why you decided to draw that today?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
I actually part of it is I just kind of I didn't have a thing. I didn't sometimes I come in, I'm like, yeah, I want to try drawing this thing. I don't know. Last couple weeks I'm kind of like suns and clouds and I was looking at I'm like, I need something to contrast. Okay, I'll put some bird shadow in front of the put some bird shadow. So the birds were only the last minute addition on there. And what I'm trying to actually no, I can give you one thing. So often artists are constantly kind of like they'll take an obsessive interest in developing a thing. So maybe they're working on hands or they're working on shadowing or they're working on three-dimensional drawings. Right now, for some reason, I'm trying to get a better understanding of how to create clouds. Straight up. How to make fairly semi-realistic cloud configurations. So yeah, there we go. That's my best justification for cloud and sun with bird.
Awesome.
There we go.
Well, I wish you a great rest of your day and weekend.
Hmm.
Um,
You too, and to Coach and to Rochelle and Gary. Thanks for chipping in,
we
carrying the weight.
appreciate it.
Yeah, helping to carry the weight of a this weekly conversation. That we are slowly coming towards the end of season 6. 6 years. of this professionally developed, rich discussion. Dad's EDU
All
life.
kinds of stuff. Food,
Mhm.
life, yeah, it's all there.
Okay,
Okay.
man.
This was season 6, episode 32, number 250 of the Decoded podcast. Thanks everybody for joining us. Chris, have a good one.
You too, man. Take care.